On our first slide, we have differential association. Differential association was written by Edwin Sutherland in 1939, and it falls under the social learning theory. The social learning theory basically states that deviant behavior is learned through the interaction of other people who are deviant. Well, Edwin Sutherland wanted to further explain the causation of this deviance. So in his theory, he proposes the idea that if an individual associates with an excess of deviant people and does not hold an equal amount of conventional associations, then the individual will likely become deviant as well. It is important to note, though, when discussing differential association, that it's specifically referring to associations with people, not just contact with individuals who are deviant. We can look at lawyers as an example. They have many daily contacts with criminals and individuals who have deviant behavior, but they don't simply begin acting deviant as well. So they do not follow that path of deviation. We've heard it said before that a bad apple will ruin the whole bunch. I feel that that is what Edwin Sutherland was referring to when he proposed this differential association. If you are associating with a larger amount of deviant people versus conventional people, eventually your behavior will follow suit and you will carry that deviant behavior as well. Our next slide is differential identification. This was proposed by Daniel Glasser in 1956. He basically set up an intervention between Sutherland's differential association and the act of deviant behavior. In looking at Sutherland's differential association, Glasser just completely disagreed with him. He felt that Sutherland had overlooked humanity's ability to have free will and to make their own choices. So with differential identification, he attempted to correct Sutherland's mechanistic image. He suggested that an association with someone who was deviant or had deviant behaviors was completely harmless. The only way this would basically become an issue for that individual is if that individual identified with the behaviors and the actions of that specific deviant person. On our third slide, we have differential reinforcement. This theory was proposed by Robert Burgess and Ronald Akers in 1966. Together, they wanted to correct the shortcomings they felt Sutherland left wide open in his differential association. They wanted to give more insight into the learning process that takes place before one becomes deviant. This theory closely falls in line with the social learning theory. In psychology, the social learning theory by Albert Bandura says that we are motivated to continue behavior that we have been rewarded for. On the same note, we will strive to discontinue behavior that we have been punished for. One of the biggest keys to differential reinforcement is the law of differential reinforcement, basically stating that if you're given several options, that you will likely choose the one that has given you the most satisfaction sometime in the past. And this specific key could further explain why some would choose deviance over conventional behavior. In our final slide, we look at critiques that can be found within the social learning theory. Our first one states that it can be difficult to assess differential association in real-life circumstances. People often do not know the person from whom they have learned the deviant behavior. This can make it very difficult for any research to be conducted. Our second one, it is true that collecting empirical data for differential association is difficult, but many sociologists have claimed that their research supports this theory. However, this isn't the whole picture. Sociologists are only able to prove this theory when they are using their interpretation of the theory. So basically they put a lens on with their idea, and this theory then fits that box. Our third critique says that Glasser's differential identification theory has no concrete proof. because there's still a question that remains. Are people becoming delinquent after they are involved with deviance, or are they deviant before and therefore seeking out those relationships? Our last critique falls on differential reinforcement. While this has been proved in many studies, it still fails to answer the question of why people initially commit these deviant acts. This theory is only able to answer why they are continued.